Hello. Today I'll be playing the role of the manager. This lovely lady here, Jenna, will be playing the role of Davo, one of my employees. And one of the employees has just had to excuse himself, Volt, but he has left us some questions that he does want to ask during the proceedings. How are you today, Davo?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Good? Okay. Hey, look, thanks very much for coming in today, Davo. Look, I just want to go over a few things today. Scenario 2, Anna, role play B. Just want to go through a few things today. Thanks once again for coming. I just want to go over a few things where we discussed today with an employee that had heard some comments today in the staff room about her 2 children and how they could be disadvantaged growing up with same-sex parents, which is her situation with her female partner. And I just wanted to go over some things that were said and how we can overcome some prejudices that arose from that conversation. Before we begin, do you have any other questions at all, Davo?
Firstly, what are some of the policies and procedures of the organisation in relation to diversity and inclusion? And secondly, I'm just going to ask Volt's question for you as well.
Sure.
He would like to know, with the amount of diversity and inclusion and the way social media is taking hold of everything, what are we to say?
Yeah, well, as you're quite aware, Davo, everyone here, that sexual orientation discrimination in the workplace, it generally arises when an employee who is openly gay is exposed to negative employment action, harassment, rejection of certain assistances because of their sexual orientation or the sexual orientation of somebody they are close to. As you know, sexual orientation discrimination has been a portion of the workplace in Australia for many years. And while federal, state and local laws, as well as increased social media responsiveness, has amended the situation historically. And many gay employees, like the employee that we have here, who are not a heterosexual, they still face hindrances at work related to being gay, bisexual, pansexual, asexual. In our company, it's important for all employees to have the right information about what establishes discrimination based on sexual orientation, and most importantly, what establishes aggravation, and how sexual orientation discrimination can tie in with other forms of discrimination like sex, religion, race, colour, disability, gender identity and marital status. As you're fully aware, any sexual orientation discrimination can affect someone's job reputation, their working environment, health benefits, and a host of other issues in the workplace. This law in this area is changing rapidly, but for the better. And this is my responsibility. And yes, we have placed posters and government regulations all onto the boards, in the smoko room, in the common areas, and also on our public notice boards. And government regulation on how we provide for diversity and inclusion in Services Australia. As we all know, Davo, our staff and their unique qualities, ideas and insights, people bring a range of skills and perspectives to the workplace. This may be due to gender, race, ethnicity, disability, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, intersex status or other differences. We recognise that every story counts. We value inclusion and diversity and encourage our staff to reach their full potential. Our workplace inclusion diversity strategy, policies and initiatives define who we are. Support flexible working arrangements such as part-time and flexible hours. We provide training for staff including Indigenous cultural awareness, disability awareness and mental health first aid. We also support women as an accredited breastfeeding friendly workplace. We provide women the space, time, support to breastfeed. As with collaboration with HR staff, we're instituting support for our LGBTI staff with inclusive HR policies, celebrating days and events to promote diversity awareness and inclusion. We'll also support diversity-specific employee networks for staff to connect, to share their views, experiences and information. As your employer, I have a legitimate responsibility to take all acceptable steps to prevent discrimination and harassment in our workplace. Some of the reasonable steps may include putting in place policies and procedures to establish a discrimination-free workplace. It could also include methods to deal with accusations of discrimination and harassment made by employees or customers. So that is why now we're having this team meeting this afternoon to address those concerns. To the other employees, we will have a conversation with our IT department and head office concerning about an email block that we know we have. As you know, Davo, it is against the law to victimise a person for making or proposing to make a complaint to the Australian Human Rights Commission about their sexual orientation, their gender identity or intersex status discrimination. Employers like myself, have also held a legally responsible for discrimination and harassment by their employees. For more information on the Smoko Room and also on the public notice board, there's also more information, a fact sheet that I'm placing on the staff board about vicarious liability when it comes to the sexual discrimination. Also about vicarious liability if any of these issues occur. You don't have any more questions about that at all?
Actually, Volt and I both would like to know what are some of the laws and legal ramifications relevant to this complaint?
Yes. Well, the complaint is concerning the Sex Discrimination Act of 1984, or commonly known as the SDA. It makes it against the law to treat an employee or someone else in your workplace unfairly because of their sex, gender identity, intersex status, sexual orientation, marital or relationship status, including same-sex de facto couples, family responsibilities, or because someone might be pregnant or might become pregnant. Discrimination always happens, Davo, when there's also a rule or policy that is the same for everyone but has an unfair effect on people of a particular sex. This is called indirect discrimination. We as your employers can dismiss, terminate or suspend an employee from the workplace. From the 1st of August 2013, it is now unlawful to discriminate against a person on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity or intersex status under federal law. Same-sex couples are now also protected under discrimination from under the definition of marital and relationship statuses. The Commission will be able to accept complaints alleging discriminations on the new grounds that occurred on or after that date. The Sex Discrimination Amendment, or Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity and Intersex Status Bill Act of 2013 amended the SDA Act of 1984 and introduced these changes. I have here in my hand on our table the SDA, or the Sex Discrimination Act 1984, and what constitutes discrimination. I will also be placing that, once again, up into the staff rooms, Smoko Room, and any other public boards that we have around our office. Please, I advise you to read it and go over it for your work or in your spare time and familiarise yourself with it. I will place copies in all the staff rooms, lunch rooms, public notice boards, and organisational information boards.
I'd actually like to know, firstly, how are you going to follow this up?
Yes.
And when it'll be done? And Bolt, he wanted me to ask as well, seeing he happened to be in the lunchroom or the Smoko Room when these remarks were made and he actually was involved in this, how's this incident going to affect him? And will you be following this up? with him as well.
Yes, well, thank you very much for that question. Well, Davo, I will also pass this information on to Volt when I see him. Since being the investigator, I'm going to should ask the complaining employee to identify any witnesses, such as yourself. I will then document and other information that support each element of the employee's complaint. I then will address any concerns that the employee might have about continuing to work with the accused discriminator while the investigation is ongoing. That is, the investigation is still ongoing, so I can't say too much out of respect of the employee with the complainant. As your employer, when hearing or being handed a discrimination complaint, I should and will be reassured that I take any complaint of discrimination very seriously. I would have to think carefully about the way I handle a complaint. Keep in mind I have to make sure I do it fairly, sensitively, and follow the right procedures. If I don't, the problem might be raised as a formal complaint letter or lead to an employment tribunal claim if it's not resolved. Every single sexual discrimination I do take seriously, and through my role I must show that I'm working to make the workplace fair, give staff confidence to raise an issue, help stop preventable unacceptable behaviour, reduce the likelihood of legal action, keep an open mind, and when dealing with sexual discrimination complaint, it's important to understand that something that seems like nothing to you and I, or only a small thing, can feel very different to the person experiencing it. I understand that it may be very hard for the person to talk about what has happened. She may be worried about who to trust, whether their complaint will be ignored, or if they were seen as a troublemaker. People can often be affected by disability discrimination in different ways too. When I'm interviewing the employee making the complaint and the other employees, it's important that really I must show as their employer I have to listen to what the person says. I have to leave any personal feelings that I have to one side. Look at how it made them feel, how it's affected them. I can't make any assumptions, and I consider the person's specific circumstances and look into the complaint thoroughly and fairly.
That sounds really good. Through listening to all the policies and procedures regarding diversity and inclusiveness, how does this organisation value working with diverse colleagues and clients? And why does this organisation value working with colleagues and clients in the diverse setting?
Well, actually, I'm glad that you asked that, because while many companies are putting diversity, equity and inclusion the greatest focus over the last few years, there's still a significant room for improvement here in Australia. It has been shown through data that diverse teams foster better employment, employee engagement, productivity, and they allow for better problem-solving abilities, as varying perspectives from often approach business challenges in a new way. The reason for this is clear. More diverse companies have greater levels of innovation. Over the last year, diversity and inclusion retreated as a strategic precedence for many organisations they endure to discourse threats to business continuous and recovery. Workforces are more decimated as some other employees are employed remotely while others are returning to the physical office or work sites. These new working preparations can further aggravate existing diversity challenges and highlight unconscious prejudice that may exist. Essentially, a dispersed workforce can distance employees and teams from one another, undermining inclusivity efforts and initiatives that existed in a traditional working environment. When we are hiring for diverse upbringings and endorsing diversity initiative, it is only the first step, Davo. Diversity, equity and inclusion go together, and to acknowledge real organisational change, our business must build a truly inclusive work culture. This means spreading initiatives beyond the hiring process and providing equal opportunity and treatment throughout every touch point of the employee experience. At our business, we plan diversity as a measure of alteration and identity. Things like gender, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, colour, religion, race. Inclusion is a reference for and appreciation of these differences. The thoughtful act of hospitable and valuing diversity and equity. There are many tips and actions, items to help bosses and employees and HR leaders to build on their current exclusive on diversity policies and procedures that imitate efforts or develop new ones for the first time. Do you have any questions at the moment?
No, I don't think I do.
Oh, wonderful. Well, look, we'll be in touch soon for our confidential meeting soon. Look, head back to work. And once again, thank you for coming today. I'll catch up with Dave a little bit later and we'll talk again soon. So head back to work and we'll be in touch, Dave. And thank you very much for your time.
I'll definitely be looking forward to reading that information that you'll be having set out for us so we can have more knowledge on what we should be expecting.
Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciated, Dave.
Thank you.
Wonderful.